All right, you guys are going to be making 2 cornhole boards each. The plywood tops have already been cut. The pieces that I have right here already have holes drilled in them, but you guys are probably going to drill your own holes if you're comfortable with doing that. For these holes, I've used a hole saw. I'll show you that in a minute. But for your holes, you're gonna use something else. All right, so the plywood is 3/4 of an inch thick. Right, if you go right here, up and down, that's 3/4 of an inch. The other way, it's 16 inches by 32. This one's a little bigger, but by 32. All right, so for your hole location, you are going to want to center your hole on the board this way, right? So if it's 16 inches overall, right, you want to take half of that, which is 8, and put a line on the top of the board over here. We want to be 4 inches to the edge of the hole, and we're doing a 4-inch hole, so the center will be 6 inches down, right? All right, so if this were the width of the board, it's short, but if this were the width of the board, we're going to go over, right, 16 inches overall. We're going to go down 8 inches, and off the edge we want to be 6 inches down. So we're going to come over here 6 inches, and I'm going to put a mark right at 6 inches, and I'm going back over here to 8 inches, and that is going to be the center of our hole. All right, so now we can go over to the drill press. These kick back a lot when you use them, so I think using a hole cutter like this is going to be safer. Obviously, this thing spins around pretty quickly, so you want to keep your hands a good distance away. That cutter right there and this will both mess you up if you get your hands too close. All right, so we are going to take our piece. We're going to put the center of this bit right above the hole. And for that, on this saw, I have a laser crosshair that represents where the hole center will be. So I'm going to line it up right there. Actually, before you start that though, you want to make sure that your depth is set properly, because I do not want to run this bit into the bed. Right, so if we go all the way down until that center bit right here sticks past the surface of the bed, but we don't want that outer bit to hit the bed because that'll destroy the cutter, right? So it's up just enough. Now this piece over here, that's a depth stop, right? So as we go down, that's going to stop at the right height so we don't damage our bit or our bed. It's also a good idea to clamp your piece down. At school, I have some pieces cut to lock your piece in, but for this, I'm going to lock the piece in with clamps. You want to go nice and slow. As I was drilling, I was keeping an eye on this, and as soon as that got close to the other metal piece, I stopped it, right? So now we have some sawdust, kind of created a mess, so we'll clean that up, but we could flip it over now. So for that, pull the clamps off. Pull the clamps off. And you can see right here, we have a hole in the center where we drilled, right? So we want to line that up with the center of that bit for our next hole. And that'll ensure that we're in the same spot. Glasses on, we're centered over our hole. Now we're going to drill through to clean up the other side. Okay, that broke free. Get this disc out of here. Now we have a nice, clean, 4-inch hole. Should be 4 inches. Yeah, a little shy, about a 16th shy, but we still need to sand it, so we'll make it a little bigger when we sand it. Okay, now we can take it off the bed and we can go and sand it. If you look at the inside of that hole we just made, you can kind of see there's a lip inside of there, right, where it's not totally smooth. So we're going to sand that to make it smooth. So you want to start with your sanding drum inside your hole. Make sure the drum is not hitting that when you turn it on, and we're going to work our way around sanding it. Now you got to keep a good hand on this also, because there's a potential for this sanding drum to catch and cause this thing to kick. So gonna turn it on. So now, looking inside of there, you can see, I think that's totally smooth. Go right on here. And as you sand these, you can look right at the space between the drum and the edge of the plywood. And there shouldn't be a gap in there. If there is a gap, it's telling you that something is holding your piece of plywood off your drum and it's not totally clean. So keep an eye on that gap as you go. And as you sand, you don't need a ton of pressure pushing the plywood into the drum. That'll be more likely to grab and also burn. So just a little bit of pressure, and don't stay in the same spot either, because you'll create a dig. You want to keep the plywood moving the whole time. So our next step is going to be to create a smooth edge around the hole and around the edge of the board. We could use a sandpaper to do that, or we could use a router. The problem that you'll have if you leave a sharp edge right here is that, one, it's going to make the plywood chip more if you hit anything on it. And also, as you throw your bags on here, when your cornhole bags hit that edge, it'll be more likely to tear the bags and break them. So what I'm going to use is a router. Right here. Got a router right here. If you look closely at that bit, you can see it has a little bit of a roundover on it. So we're going to use that bit to ease over the edge. Right on here, there's a bearing too. That bearing right there rides up against the wood you were cutting. That little carbide cutter edge right there and there, there's two of them, there and there. Those are what cuts the wood. So I already have this router set up nicely. I'm going to plug it in and route my holes and the edges. We're going to go all the way around the perimeter of the board on both sides, and we're going to go all the way around the inside of the hole on both sides, top and bottom of plywood. So we'll start it down here. Make sure our cutter is not hitting our wood. Wait till it stops to move it. Alright, so if you look really closely at that, you can see it just kind of rounded the edge over a little bit. Now we're going to go around the perimeter also. Whenever you're using a router, you want to go in a counterclockwise direction, or left to right as you're looking at the piece. Right, if I'm looking at it this way, we want to start on the left, go to the right. One spot which I didn't do, which leaves a sharp edge, is the edge right here, that outside corner. So what we'll do with that is take some sandpaper and just round it over. Sandpaper right there. Now we'll just round that over a little bit. So I'll take this, right, that edge, and just sand it like so. Now it's nice and smooth. Also, that router cut, it's a little rough. So it's a good idea to take your sandpaper and sand that smooth. For this, I'm using 120 grit. 120 grit right there. It's a good roughness of the sandpaper for a job like this. You could do 120, 150 grit. 150 is a little bit smoother, a little finer. So we'll go around the perimeter of the board and give it a nice sanding. We're also going to sand the tops of our boards, but we'll do that afterwards. As we sand this way, we might put some scratches in the grain right there. I don't know if you can see them, but it leaves little scratches on the edge. So we'll sand the face afterwards. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to sand the edges of the board right now. Beautiful. So that one is sanded. Now we'll have to go back and sand the other board that we did before, being that one.